Coogs House, the word of the day is change because things keep changing in the DB room for the Houston Cougars, and the baseball team may be changing very soon, albeit for the better.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach, Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Patient making your first listen each and every day. If you want to join the conversation but you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below what you put on your hot dog, because we've been the latter two-thirds of the show talking about baseball's do or die weekend and whether or not they're about to make a coaching change over there in the dugout. Maybe needed, but when I think about baseball, I think about hot dogs. So I'm asking you what you put on your hot dog today. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money, a great place to get all of your finances under control and start building some wealth in one single app. But we got more on that later because we're starting the show with more coming together about the defensive backfield for Houston. I'm checking my phone as this happens to make sure I'm not missing the latest because on Wednesday, Houston added 2 defensive backs in the transfer portal that we were, at least if you've been listening to Locked On Cougs every day and are an everydayer, first I should say thank you, but second, the everydayers have been following along knowing that Wrook Brown was crystal balled to Houston and is coming to Houston with Keani Parks. Those 2 guys played together at Wyoming. So some combination there that's nice. We also have been kind of following Blake Thompson as a Houstonian, again from Missouri City. I should point out Wrook Brown is from Salado in Central Texas. Blake Thompson is from Missouri City. I think he went to Elkins High School is what I have down on my notes here, is that he went to Elkins. He started off at Iowa State, was a 3-star, high-end 3-star there, spent the last year at Louisiana Tech, and played really well there. It's looking to get back into the Power 4, the Big 12, etc. Both these guys are guys that did pretty well in terms of PFF grades and stuff like that a year ago. Thompson's being a little bit higher. Thompson is also listed as a safety, whereas Wrook Brown is listed as a defensive back. I think he's probably more likely to play corner at Houston. And so suddenly you're starting to get more names in the defensive backfield. You know you're bringing back Latrell McCutcheon. He's kind of your bedrock now with all of the guys, A.J. Halsey and Jeremiah Wilson and all those guys leaving, Keontae Scott, right? So you're going to roll with McCutcheon on one side. J.D. Rim supposedly going to play one of the other spots there. We'll see. We also brought in, again, Keani Parks, Lamar Vader, Mark Stampley, Jordan Allen. You've got a lot of talent back there. And it's going to be kind of interesting to see where the different jigsaw pieces fit together. And unfortunately, the spring game doesn't help us a whole lot. Spring practice doesn't help us a whole lot. Jeremiah Wilson went through spring practice and put himself in the transfer portal right before the spring game. A.J. Halsey right after the spring game. Keontae Scott a few days later. And so we don't have a whole lot of an idea of how these guys will fit together without that trio, let alone that Maurice Williams also into the transfer portal since then. And I think there's a lot of people admittedly questioning what's going on with the defensive backs. A lot of change and turnover there. I'd point out that a big part of this is a well-sought-after Zach Etheridge left in the middle of the spring to go to the University of Miami. So a lot of guys that had played under him as a position coach were comfortable, liked playing for him, or open to change the scenery now that he's gone or whatever, right? They also changed defensive coordinators back in December, not exactly by their choice, although I think everyone's excited about Austin Armstrong. The more you talk to them, the new defensive coordinator. I pointed this out on yesterday's show. I think it got kind of covered up by a lot of stuff, but I want to point out one more time. I think it speaks volumes, like lots and lots of loud volumes, that you've got all Big 12, you've got top-tier talent and defensive backfield entering the transfer portal, leaving Houston, and not even looking at Texas Tech. Texas Tech has thrown oil money around in the transfer portal this year like no one's business. They took your defensive coordinator kind of in the middle of the night, very suddenly for Houston. And ultimately, the guys leaving Houston aren't even talking about going to Tech. And so they're, we got a couple guys looking at Miami. Nothing's confirmed as I'm saying this, so I'm trying to watch what I say here. I don't want to put false allegations out there, but AJ Halsey has visited Miami. I saw one analyst put in their 2 cents thinking they think Keontae Scott's going to go to Miami. Scott followed Etheridge to Houston, and so I think that makes sense. Halsey played extremely well for Etheridge, first team All Big 12, Phil Steele All-American. I think it makes total sense, obviously, right? But Jeremiah Wilson, Florida State, Maurice Williams, Arizona State. Like, these guys aren't looking to follow Shieldwood anytime soon. As far as what Houston's going to do, I mentioned that they've got now Wrook Brown, Blake Thompson, Trell McCutcheon, J.D. Rim, Keone Parks, Zelmar Vader, Mark Stampley, and Jordan Allen. I still think they're going to end up getting at least one more guy I've been high on. If you and every day you know at this point is Brian Nelson. Brian is currently at he's transferring out of North Texas, a 6 foot, 190-pound corner, played a lot of different types of corner throughout the season. If you're football, like if you're getting into the nerdy side of field versus boundary versus matchup on man-to-man with number one versus zone side, he's done a lot of each of those things at North Texas, which shows versatility as far as playing corner goes. He's from Pearland, went to Shadow Creek High School. And I think that ultimately he's a guy I see Houston having a real shot at because he's from Houston, but also a guy they have a real shot at and need because they want as many options, as many puzzle pieces to put together or as many different ways to fit a defensive backfield together as they can. Ultimately, football does sometimes come down to a numbers game, whether that's because of health or because of optionality and flexibility and schematics from week to week. We also know that one of Austin and Armstrong's strength as a defense is being a confusing defense for opposing offenses. But you also need to make sure that your defensive guys know what they're doing. The more options you have, the more likely you have guys that can put it all together. Some guys that have played, Power 5 football, Power 5, I guess, at the time for Blake Thompson when he was at Iowa State or whatever. And they also, like, Jordan Allen played some time at LSU, right? Like, these guys have played bigger time football. I think that's important. I think that's going to work. And I don't necessarily know what fits in. I think Brian Nelson fits that plan pretty well. I got a couple other DBs to keep an eye on. Jalen Hoyle, this guy got actually I kind of saw his name plugged a couple times as a guy I keep an eye on for Houston. 6 foot, 185 pounds, transferring out of Stony Brook right now, was actually at Virginia Tech before that. Good in coverage, good at hitting the ball or making plays on the ball. Only a couple picks, lots of pass breakups, a couple forced fumbles. One of the best G5 athletes on the field when he played last season. Sticks out as a guy that could move up and not be out-athleted necessarily. So I'd be interested to see what he looks like in a Houston Cougar uniform. That's Jalen Hoyle, the safety out of Stony Brook. The next one I kind of think is a long shot, but I will not kick Cedric Hawkins out of the defensive film room for Houston. He's a 6 foot, 185-pound safety. He's originally from Florida, but he was a 4-star recruit that committed to Ohio State. So he's from the state of Florida, I should say, like when I went to high school. I went to Ohio State at a high school, then transferred to UCF, Central Florida the Knights, and didn't start for them last year, is looking to move around some. I don't think he wants to go back a whole bunch of divisions. If you look at his offer sheets out of high school and out of that initial transfer, it doesn't make sense that he would. If he could stay in the Power 4, he would obviously want to. It would not make sense that he would go down, I should say, to a different division or different, like a Group 5 school, whatever, as far as NIL money goes and all that. I think Houston could have a shot at him if they want to go get him. I will say, as much as I love this staff, it probably would take like an Armstrong or one of the newer faces going to get him. The Willie Fritz crew kind of doesn't get into Florida quite as much as previous staffs have. They're looking more at Texas and places they can drive. And then I wonder if they got a shot at Jalen O'Neal, I kind of want to give him a shot. He was a 3-star recruit out of Manville. Went to Allen Christian, I believe, Allen Christian at high school, and then is currently, I guess, transferring out of Sam Houston. He's again a local kid that I would give a chance to, because I think that we've seen Fritz staffs, not necessarily Armstrong, although he did some of this at Florida and certainly at Southern Miss, but Fritz staffs have generally found those guys at the group of 5 that can play kind of above their weight class. And so if they signed off on Jalen O'Neal, I'd see that as the ultimate sign of approval. I like his video. Again, he's a local kid, so it kind of caught my attention. So I'd keep an eye on Brian Nelson, Jalen Hoyle, Jalen O'Neal. It'd be great if they got a look at Cedric Hawkins too, because he's a great, great athlete. But I think the defensive back room, as many names were thrown into it, is still not quite done. Speaking of not quite done, the Houston Cougars are playing a baseball season these days. And so I do want to talk about that a little bit before they go into what's an important weekend for so many reasons. But we're going to get to all that in just a second, because first, I want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by Amazon Fire Stick TV and Amazon Fire TV in 4K. Did you know that your Fire TV can also be an Xbox? It can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick. The 4K devices, no consoles required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go, diving into hundreds of premium titles like College Football 25, Call of Duty, whatever, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. You can jump into all those very quickly, every single room in your house, wherever you are. Currently stream content through all kinds of things. If you have a bunch of devices, whatever, this is all central, singular device you can put on your TV, or a specific TV in your house. You can also put the stick into any TV across your house. It's a great, great option at Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription, compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire Stick TV 2nd generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd generation, and the Fire TV Cube 3rd generation. Parker Angel, Locked On Cougs here, and I mentioned that baseball is heading into an important weekend, and I felt like that was important enough to bring up for baseball folks. I've been loosely following baseball on my own this season. Decided it's time to see if folks want to follow it along with me as they head into what's, again, an important series this weekend. Now, Houston baseball's not had a great season by any stretch. 7-13 in conference, a game and a half up on the 12 seed, which is important because the top 12 out of 14 baseball programs in the conference make the conference tournament. So if you start getting that 12 seed or beneath it, you got a problem, especially when there are 2 teams tied at that 12 seed, being BYU and UCF. You're only a game and a half up on them. BYU's 3 Big 12 series they have left are Kansas State, Kansas, and Texas Tech. We'll get to that in a second. Central Florida has Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and Baylor. Houston has, they have Utah this weekend. And then I believe it's Arizona State and then Arizona. They play the Arizona schools to wrap up Big 12 play as far as their Big 12 series go. BYU, I think, has a similar difficulty schedule in terms of quality of opponents. However, they've got 2 of the 3 series at home, where Houston's on the road, right, for 2 of the 3. UCF has the much easier schedule out down the stretch in these Big 12 series. And so suddenly you're seeing that 11, 12 seed spot kind of slowly slip away, and you could ultimately miss the Big 12 tournament. Now, if you were to get into that tournament at the present record as they stand, you'd have to end up playing Arizona theoretically again in a first-round matchup after having just played them in the last 2 weeks of the season. Theoretically beating them, you'd have to have beat them, I think, 2 out of 3 times in the weekend. Can you beat them 3 out of 4 times to move on? I get the complications there and why people be skeptical about even getting out of the first round. Does it even matter? I kind of think it does. We'll talk about that in later in the second segment and into the third segment as well. But the deal here is that you're really looking at like kind of an uphill battle out of the Oklahoma State series, where you canceled a game and lost one. in embarrassing fashion, which will come up throughout this last two segments of the show. It kind of makes this weekend a must-have weekend. Frankly, just 2 out of 3 versus Utah is barely acceptable. You kind of need to sweep them, and that's really been hard for the Houston Cougar program to do. But really, Utah's at the bottom of the conference, and it's kind of your last chance to get the feel-good conference series win. You haven't won. You've only won 2 of the 6 conference series. No, 2 of the 7 conference series so far. Things have not been great in terms of winning the series, and I think to ultimately make it into that 12th spot between the advantages BYU and Central Florida have in the final push here, you're going to have to win the series, at least against Utah. And I think you have to sweep it, because getting more than a game off of Arizona State and Arizona feels like a long shot right now. Houston just hadn't had defensive games. They've given up a lot of runs. They're fun to watch. Outfielder Xavier Perez has been fantastic individually. He's got over 300 average. He's got OPS of 921. He's really swinging the bat well. Clyde Climby is playing every day at third base, 9 homers, 914 OPS. They've got some bats if they can keep the games low scoring, but they haven't proven able to do that, which kind of ultimately become their own downfall across here. Now, that's all in Big 12 play, and you hope to kind of make a run in the Big 12 tournament, because you're going to need to win that Big 12 tournament to make a play at getting into any actual postseason action after that. And that all may seem far-fetched and not important, but it's been a while since this program had anything like that. And that's obviously, again, I tend to be optimistic in terms of wins and losses. I tend to think that the football team should win 8 to 10 games next season, which is a high-end thing, but I look at the schedule, I think it's familiar, it's friendly and all of that. Even the optimist that I am does not think the baseball team is going to win the Big 12 conference tournament. But weird things happen, and I dang sure want a chance, right? I want to get into the first round. They're playing at the ballpark in Arlington. I forget what the new one's called. Is the new one Globe Life? It's where the Rangers play in Arlington. I believe the new one's called Globe Life. Anyway, they're playing. It's an indoor deal. I think the kind of thing where, they've got some guys with some bats, and if they can get hot pitching, sometimes it's better to be hot than actually good. I think that there's a push they can make there. And ultimately, I think they kind of almost have to, if Todd Whitting wants to save his job. Todd Whitting's been around a long time. He is Houston Cougar through and through in many ways, but it feels like that time may be ultimately coming to a close. So I want to talk about why that is in the third and final segment, and what might be a little bit longer segment. So we're going to move over to that and talk about why Todd Whitting's got to win this weekend and win in the Big 12 tournament to have a shot to keep his job. But first, I mentioned at the top here that today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Now, if you ever check your bank account, you wonder where did the money go between dining, eating out, shopping, Final Four swag, whatever. There's Monarch Money to help you keep from losing track. It's your personal CFO, full visibility control over all your finances, but it's not just a budgeting app. Monarch Money is a complete financial command center. Track all your accounts, investments, spending in one place, just one place. Stop managing your money. Start building wealth with a single app and dashboard. I like how simple that single place is. I teach, I coach, I podcast, I spend money on stupid stuff like the sneakers on the wall behind me. I've got a lot of different things going on. Monarch Money helps me keep control of all of it, and probably the most adult way I physically could. So take control of your finances. Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, Park Ranger, Locked On Coogs here, and we've been talking about baseball in the second segment. Now, Houston kind of, sort of needed to sweep this weekend against Utah to really put themselves in a good spot for the Big 12 tournament, to really put themselves in a good spot to ultimately just make a run in that tournament and keep Todd Whitting's job. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say you got to want him to keep his job or not. If they don't make the Big 12 tournament for a second year in a row, I don't know how he could. Last year, Houston was 7-21 in conference, finished 12th, but there was a different number of teams in the conference. The conference tournament looked a little bit different. Yes, this year it looks like they got a real shot at being in the tournament, the Big 12 tournament that is, but it is a little bit more. It's an expanded field. They went up to 12 because there are 14 baseball programs in the conference now, and I just don't think he can miss it again. Under Whitting, the program's kind of been in a roller coaster the last decade. In 2023, last half decade, I should say, 2023, great year in American Athletic Conference play. 2021, 7-21, 1934 overall, right? Houston has not been to the NCAA postseason since 2018, which why in the second segment I was talking some about, like, it'd be great to finally get back to that, but they're just too far away right now unless they got really hot and made a gigantic run. And to be fair, all of that makes people upset. Todd Whitting, to be fair, in 2018 was the American Athletic Conference Coach of the Year, and did some really great things. The fact that the program has not been able to build on that success or any of the success before it, and has kind of been in a downward slide since, makes people upset because there's so much good baseball being played within 90 minutes of the greater Houston area. It doesn't make sense that Houston does not have a respectable baseball program in a lot of ways. It's got, again, talented players. It's produced talented players. It's the win-loss column the last half decade that has people really upset. And ultimately, it leaves people perplexed as to how he got an extension in 2023 when they went 17-6 in American Athletic Conference play. Cool. That was enough to get him an extension through the end of the 2026 season. So after this year, Whitting will have a year left on his deal. The buyout is not crazy complicated. I believe it's 40% of the contract would be due back to him for the final year of the contract would be due back to him if they wanted to buy him out. That's not anything that they could not do if they wanted to get rid of him this summer. The full share, the $40 million rev share for the Big 12 is coming in 2026. I think you're going to start seeing Houston make some moves, both because athletic directors New and Eddie Nunez, but also because you're going to start seeing them make moves as if they're making that 40, because you're going to have to start, you're going to be able to start paying checks with that 40 in the 2026, 2027 school year. So you can kind of start to move into that world. You can kind of schedule your books in that kind of way, right? And I think that because of that, almost because Houston's going to have the money to buy him out, and because there's going to be a lot smaller buyout this summer than there was last summer, Whitting's job is in jeopardy if they don't make some noise in the Big 12 Conference tournament. And again, it doesn't seem like very likely that they do, but I kind of think that he's got to. The big deal, though, is that it might not matter. And it might not matter because, again, they've had a couple down years in a row. 2023 aside, when they went, like I said, 17-6 in the American Athletic Conference play, they're no longer an American Athletic Conference team. So then you got to kind of judge that or by a different set of standards. The cherry on top for this year was the Oklahoma State debacle. And we didn't talk about it at the time. Baseball, frankly, don't get a whole lot of interaction from people on baseball on this podcast. And so we didn't go into it too much on Monday's episode after this happened on a Sunday. But Houston played a 3-day series, Oklahoma State. They won the Friday game. Good win. Saturday gets canceled because of weather. And Houston, feels like should have felt like they're in a good spot going into Sunday. And then 4 innings in, Houston is down 9-1. And they're pushing it. And frankly, it's in the 3 o'clock hour. The game is going to be over by 4:05. Because Houston's got to make the travel curfew to get their flights and so on, right? And so the only rule at that point is that Oklahoma State's got to get 5 innings of a game in for it to count as a game, and then the travel curfew can kick in and Houston leaves, right? And Houston is down 9-1. Like, it's no doubt they're getting their butt kicked. The game, for all intents and purposes, should have counted as a loss. Ultimately, it did. But the maneuvering Houston and Coach Todd Whitting were pulling to try and get out without that loss were embarrassing. I don't know how else to say it. If you did not watch it, I'd go through it right fast. As the game was winding down, late 3:00 hour, that 4:05 time was like so crucial. I had to look at to make sure I knew the time of day exactly. It's 4:05. Was that, they had to get the fifth inning done with by 4:05 to ultimately count the game. And as the 3:00 hour is winding down, you've got Whitting questioning calls and going on the field, getting in animated antics and disputes and, all that kind of stuff with umpire to try and prolong the game. He's got players losing bats as they're swinging and stuff like, I got to pick up my bat now, trying to delay that third and final out of the inning as long as possible. Ultimately, Whitting goes out in the field and throws a fit and gets tossed, but then he takes comically long to go back and get his bag and get his stuff, and he walks the whole warning track to get off the field and walks super slow because they can't go back to play until he's off of the field. The play-by-play guys called it Bush League. The fans in Stillwater were booing him. It was all super embarrassing. It's the kind of thing that old school fans that think about playing the game with an honorable kind of decor couldn't believe he did it. Fans that are more new school and win it all any cost or whatever were you shouldn't have been down 9-1 to a team you beat on Friday. There all kinds of emotions from all kinds of people about it, but none of them were good. It was bad. It was not a good look for Whitting or the baseball program. And even after he got off the field, you had the Houston Cougar batter loses their bat. They call a timeout to kind of talk things over, and they ultimately, the umpires give both dugouts a warning about how they're playing or whatever. And ultimately, the inning did finish. They finished the Houston side, and then it was Houston's turn to pitch with Oklahoma State up by 8 runs. I almost said 8 runs, 9-1. And Houston hadn't warmed up a pitcher. They were so clearly trying to stall. They hadn't even gone through the process of getting someone's arm loosened up to go play the bottom half of the inning because they were trying that hard and that focused on not having to play it. Ultimately, the umpires called the game there, called it good because the score was what it was, and called the 5th inning done. Game was over. Win goes to Oklahoma State, as it should have been, right? And it's just kind of this singular moment in the last month where people were like, why do we have this guy? We're not winning games. We're not getting good Houston, and we're getting good Houston area talent, but we can't seem to put it all together and make a good Houston area baseball team. We're throwing temper tantrums, throwing fits. What are we doing with this program, right? Just all bad. And now that program, if they don't have a really good weekend this weekend, is in real jeopardy of missing the conference baseball tournament altogether. And I don't know if you care more about wins and losses or what the program looks like or keeping Houston area kids in town or whatever. But if they don't win this weekend, and Todd Whitting hasn't done any of those things, and if Todd Whitting isn't doing any of those things, I think you got to look at moving on. Now, there were all kinds of talks about who it could be if they were to move on from Whitting back before he got his extension. We'll wrestle with that if and when it happens. So every day is here. I want to talk baseball. Stay tuned in and keep these kind of things, comments going, and we'll keep talking about bats and balls and all of that. I hope, again, for the sake of entertainment, I'd like to see them, frankly, beat the Arizona schools, get into the Big 12 tournament, make some noise, right? Have some fun with the whole thing. When baseball is going your way, it's a lot of fun. And so I'm here for it. I think it'd be awesome to see that happen. But for now, it has not been. And so we'll be following it this weekend. If news is made and needs to be discussed, we'll be talking about it at Locked On Cougs. So hit subscribe, hit the bell, so you know we're live for the latest in the Houston Cougars each and every day. Every second listen of the day. Locked On College Basketball, Locked On Big 12, covering all things in college basketball and all things in the Big 12. We also got a Big 12 squad coming out later today, so check that out while you're surfing podcast. Locked on Cougs, primarily Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Go Cougs.